everyone. It's now 19 minutes past the hour, and a big thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Randall White. If you head out to your favorite farmer's market, farm stand, or grocery store this time of year, you will see big, bright red, juicy, and really flavorful strawberries. Grown here, of course, on California's Central Coast, the hot spot for that crop. It is peak strawberry season. In fact, Santa Maria recently had their annual strawberry festival. Oxnard's is next weekend, the 18th and 19th, and then I believe Arroyo Grande's is the week after that. I mix fresh organic strawberries into my oatmeal just about every morning, and have noticed lately the organic versions are huge. A lot of times they're on the smaller side, but just giant. You know, I don't often think about the work that goes into harvesting these national favorites, and strawberries, by the way, consistently rank in the top spot among fruits and vegetables, but it is indeed back-breaking work. LA Times writer Hector Becerra's article titled "A Day in the Strawberry Fields Seems Like Forever" was published in the paper last Friday and details the difficulties of harvesting this crop. He joins us on the live line right now to talk about his couple of days in the fields of Santa Maria. Hector, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. You know, I instantly, when I saw the article, I began reading it, and then I was looking at the pictures and realized that when I used to anchor the morning news at KCOY CBS 12 in Santa Maria, I would bike ride a portion of my commute into the station, and it took me right along the strawberry fields. And on my way home from work, which was around noon every day, I would see these people out in the fields in their uniforms that you got into. And on some of the warmer days, I would think, wow, how are they covered up like that with so much clothing? But the day that you were there was a cooler day, right?
Yeah, actually, it was sort of optimal conditions. I really couldn't complain about the weather conditions at all.
The weather conditions you couldn't complain about, but what was it? The position your body had to be in for hours at a time?
Yeah, you know, I don't even do weeding, so I'm a city boy to the extreme, and I just wasn't used to being bowed and bent for hours at a time. And not only that, the hand-eye coordination necessary to actually pack strawberries and pack them well, pack them nice, was just too much for me to handle.
Yeah, because there's a speed element to this, and a lot of people think that the strawberries are picked and then they're brought to some central location where they're nicely placed in the packaging so the red shiny sides are up and that sort of thing. But no, that's done by the field workers.
Yeah, it's all done by hand in the fields. I mean, it goes to a factory or a facility to be, where it's kept in front of coolers to be kept cool. But I mean, that, my wife would always tell me, wash your fruit, and I would sort of like just shrug, and sometimes I'd do it, sometimes I wouldn't. But you should, because more often than not, what you actually find in the package was held by someone in their hands in a field, put it in that package, and then it ends up in your refrigerator.
That's impressive to me, because I buy a lot of strawberries. So I'm going to think about that now every time I open one of those shells and reach in, and I do notice how nicely they're placed in there. So I didn't realize that was on the part of the workers. And you said, I don't remember what the exact quote is, but that you were living sort of a Tetris nightmare.
Right. Well, you're walking down the roads, and by the way, the roads are very narrow, and you have this little cart that you're trying to push, and so it's sort of like sensory bombardment, and the workers are using both hands basically equally, and it's almost like they're not thinking, but of course they're just thinking very fast as they're picking the strawberries expertly. They're putting them with both hands on clamshells on either side, and they're sorting them really nice. The problem that I would run into was that I'd go mad just looking for the perfect shape. Sometimes I'd want a small strawberry, and I just couldn't find one. I'd want a slender one, and I couldn't find one. The ones that I liked the most were the sort of the flat, large ones, because those were pretty practical. They could kind of cover a lot of space. Right. They were huge, and they were easier to fit. But, I got really obsessed with the shapes of strawberries.
They stacked better when they were the big flat ones, huh?
Sort of, I thought.
That's funny. So you spent this day out in the fields packing the strawberries, and you met a lot of people. From the gist of the article that you wrote, it seems like these people are in pretty high spirits despite this backbreaking work.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that they were, sort of, whistling while they worked. I mean, I think it's really hard work, and what are you going to do? Complain about it? I mean, I think the moment you start complaining about it, it's the moment that your body just gives away, and you just can't do it. And I think they just kind of gut through, and I think to the best of their ability, they try to sort of make it as bearable as possible. There was music that was playing that you could hear from the machines that were sort of moving through the fields, and a couple of the workers would actually sing along to some of these ranchera songs, and I didn't hear a lot of complaining. Occasionally a worker would sort of stop and rub their thighs and sort of, but they didn't do that for very long. I didn't hear a lot of whining. I think most of the whining that took place in that field was sort of done internally in my brain.
Mm-hmm. You met Mark Teixeira, one of the big landowners in the area, and you got to speak to him a little bit about the issue of immigrant workers. Can you talk a bit about that?
Right. I mean, actually, Mark had been quoted by a colleague of mine, a columnist, George Skelton, I think a couple of months ago, and Mark had actually made a comment about how not just any bozo off the street can't do this kind of work. And so I sort of thought, well, I'm sort of like a bozo off the street. I'd like to give it a try.
Right.
And so I was connected to him, and he was totally gung ho about letting me do it. But he didn't think I should do strawberries. He thought I should do broccoli or some other crop. Not because they were easy, because I think he just thought that I would be able to do it better and longer without just sort of breaking down.
Right.
So, and he insists that like a lot of growers, and a lot of the growers are Republicans and conservatives. They believe that Americans will not or cannot do this kind of work. I sort of disagree with that. I think Americans can do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, that most of us just haven't been in a situation where we feel like we actually have to. And I think that element, that sense of feeling like you have to do it, is pretty important. It's a pretty important ingredient.
Some of these workers in the fields, this isn't their only job, or some of them they're going to school at night. They put in some incredibly long hours.
Yeah, well, I met one worker, a 21-year-old woman, I think Naomi Lopez, and she was actually going to school 4 nights a week at the Hancock Community College, and she wanted to be a winemaker, and her dream was to go to Italy and make wines. But this is how she paid for college, was by working in the fields. Right.
You're the son of immigrants, is that right?
Yes, my parents came from Mexico more than 45 years ago.
And their dreams were for you to move on to, well, like what you're doing now, and that's the dream of some of the people in the fields, correct?
Yeah, I mean, my parents wanted me to go to college, and father worked pretty hard, but to the extent that he had time to kind of push me to go to school, he did. And in fact, most of us, a family of 6, actually did go to college, and I think did fairly well by him. So, and I think that's sort of a universal dream. I think a lot of people, most of the people in the field that I spoke to, this is not what they want from their own children.
No, the field you were in was not an organic field.
I don't know. I know that the strawberries were humongous. I'd actually never seen strawberries like this in person. So I don't know whether that means they were organic or they were, or what. I know that there were warnings about pesticides, and if organic strawberries preclude the use of pesticides, then I assume they were not.
Yeah.
I know they were going to Dole, though, because we were putting them in Dole clamshells.
LA Times writer Hector Becerra, his article titled "A Day in the Strawberry Fields Seems Like Forever" is linked at eatdrinkexplore.com right under today's program summary. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience in the Santa Maria fields.
It's Market
Thank you for having me.
All right, stick around, everyone.